There is a version of Elon Musk that almost nobody has ever seen. Not the press, not the investors, not even most of the people who have worked beside him for years. A version that exists only in the quiet hour after midnight, when the meetings are over, the messages have stopped, and the silence in the room becomes louder than any rocket engine he has ever built. People look at him and see the name, the companies, the headlines, the net worth that has become its own kind of news story. What they do not see is the man who sits by the window at that hour, looking at nothing in particular, thinking about a question that logic has never been able to answer for him. Who is going to be there when all of this is over? Not the investors, not the board, not the cameras. This is the story of that question, where it came from, and what it eventually revealed. It happened, by most accounts, on an ordinary Tuesday. Nothing about the day stood out from the outside. A difficult meeting had just ended. The numbers had not been good. The team was tense. He walked out of the building and stood alone in the parking lot. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, his mind did not go to the company, the numbers, or the next problem waiting to be solved. It went somewhere else entirely. To a question that had apparently been sitting quietly in the back of his mind for a long time, waiting for a moment empty enough to finally surface. Who is going to sit with me in a quiet kitchen on an ordinary morning simply because they want to be there? Not because of what he had built, because of him. He has spent years building things meant to secure the future of humanity. In that parking lot, by his own account, in later, rare moments of reflection, he recognized that he had built almost nothing for the future of his own personal life. This part of the story does not come from a press release or an interview. It comes from the pattern of his choices and from the handful of unguarded moments where people close to him have described what they noticed. He began, in his own private thinking, to imagine a specific kind of presence. Not a face, not a name, a feeling. The way an ordinary room might feel different with the right person in it. The way silence feels different when it is shared rather than carried alone. He imagined what it might be like to come home to someone who was there for reasons that had nothing to do with the company, the money, or the name on the door. Someone there simply because of the person underneath all of it, the version of him that almost nobody actually knows. At some point, according to those closest to him, something shifted. Not publicly, not with any announcement. A private decision made without an audience. He decided he was done pretending he did not need anyone, done pretending that building extraordinary things for the world was enough to fill every other space inside him, done pretending that strength meant never wanting company. The people around him had, by then, become remarkably skilled at reading his professional needs. They knew when a design disappointed him. They knew when a breakthrough excited him. They knew his routines down to the smallest detail. But almost none of them knew about the version of him that exists after midnight. The version that does not want another meeting or another problem to solve. The version that simply wants to sit beside someone, put his head down and say, "I am tired, and I am glad you are here." That version, by every account available, has been waiting, quietly, patiently, in the only way he has ever known how to wait, which is mostly without saying anything at all. Here is what those close observations, pieced together over years, seem to reveal about what he is actually looking for. Not someone impressed by the rockets, not someone excited by the money, not someone who wants to be seen standing beside him. Someone who would value him just as much if none of that existed at all. If the only thing he had to offer was the person underneath the achievements. By every indication, the kind of woman he is describing, even indirectly, is someone who reads quietly in the corner of a crowded room. Someone who notices what other people walk past without seeing. Someone who would rather have one real conversation than 100 polished ones. Someone who has been through something that made her quieter on the outside and deeper underneath. Someone who has been waiting, too, without fully realizing that is what she was doing. And if he could say it directly, in the words people close to him believe he has been circling for years, it might sound something like this. You are not too much. You are not too emotional. You are not too complicated. You are exactly what has been missing. There is a specific kind of statement that surfaces, in different forms, from people who have spent real time with him outside of work. That he would trade an extraordinary amount, perhaps more than the public would ever guess, for one ordinary morning where the first thing he sees is someone who chose to be there. Not because she is beautiful, although by every account he would consider her so. Not because she is perfect, because by his own admission, perfect was never actually what he wanted. Real was what he wanted. The version of a person that exists before the world is watching. Tired eyes, cold coffee, the kind of laugh that comes from something only the two of them would find funny. The quiet that arrives when something is wrong and does not always need to be explained immediately. That, more than any achievement, appears to be the version of connection he has spent years quietly hoping to find. If there is a single secret underneath this entire story, it is this. Somewhere between building rockets, redesigning the automobile, and reaching for a future most people cannot yet imagine, a quieter, more private hope has been running alongside all of it. The hope of being known completely by one person, not for what he built, but for who he actually is when nothing is being built at all. This is not a secret he has announced. It is a secret visible only in the pattern of his choices, in the rare, unguarded moments, in the specific things people who have spent real private time with him have noticed and occasionally shared. A whole man by most measures. But, by his own quiet admission to those closest to him, a man who has been whole and cold for a long time, and who is ready, finally, to be warm again. This is the story beneath the headlines. Not the rockets, not the companies, not the net worth that dominates every conversation about his life. A man, like any other, who has spent years building an extraordinary external world while quietly hoping that somewhere, eventually, someone would want to know the ordinary one underneath it. If this story moves something in you, it is likely because you recognize the feeling. The hope of being chosen not for what you have built, but for who you actually are in the quiet hours nobody else sees. That hope is not unique to one of the most famous men in the world. It belongs to almost everyone watching this right now. If this story reached something in you tonight, sit with that for a moment before you move on to anything else. And if you want more stories like this, finding the human truth underneath extraordinary lives, subscribe and stay with us. We will see you there.